Well, good afternoon, folks. How's everybody doing? And today, it's Saturday, and it's time for the Concern Forum. And I'm your host, Bob Helms. And today, I have a couple of exciting guests. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. As you know, at the start of every program, I throw in my 1 1/2 cent. Well, today it might be a little more valuable, maybe 2.5 cents. But I look at what's going on, and I look at our president, and it's very hard not to get dragged down with this guy, and hang on his every word. And perhaps we shouldn't do that. But when the guy who's supposed to be the strongest guy in the world in terms of, governmental power, military strength, and what have you, and when this guy turns out to be an ignorant, lying baboon, it's very hard to ignore the things that he says. And I fear that the only thing that this guy came into office for is to disrupt this country. And not disrupt it in the sense that he felt that he had a better way. I honestly feel that what he wants to do, him and the people that support him, they are trying to destroy our form of government. See, it's not even about destroying the government. It's about destroying democracy. It's about destroying the right of the people to govern themselves. And that's what people don't seem to understand. Oh, put it this way. The people that still continue to support this guy, I don't think that they ever really went to school. Or if they did, they probably didn't like what they learned about the idea that the people are the ones that control the government. And see, I think that's something that a lot of us don't understand. Also, this business that, we love our children so much, and we have to think of their future. Well, unfortunately, I think that in some places, with some people, I think that's a lot of crap, to be honest about it. You have people in this country, and I find this shocking, that would rather die than see, for example, the person that I'm supporting, Bernie Sanders. And I'm not going to, at this point, right now, I'm not going to go through his whole health insurance, medical ideas. But just suffice it to say that it will be much better than what Trump is trying to do, which is to basically end it for everyone, unless, of course, you're wealthy. But you talk to some poor, and I will say it, poor, low-income, white working-class folks who are ill. And people approach them and say, well, listen, Bernie's plan would make your life a whole lot better. It would probably help you live a whole lot longer. And they'll respond with this, if it means that some women on welfare, and of course we know he's talking about a black lady, or if it means some illegal immigrant will be able to get it, then I don't want it. I don't want to see it passed. I'm saying to myself, well, suppose it's your kid. Would you still have that same attitude? And I'm pretty sure that they would. And I really wonder about people like that. Well, number one, no one is suggesting that, we're fighting in this election about medical care. We're not fighting for medical care for people who are in the country illegally. We're not doing that. All right, that's a whole different issue, number one. And I think that over the passage of time, we have proven that this business about the welfare queens, that's something that never existed. Or put it this way, if it does exist, I'm quite sure you're going to find just as many welfare queens in West Virginia as you're going to find in the inner city of Harlem or Brooklyn. Need is where you find it. It's not limited to any particular race or nationality. And I'm going to tell you a story about race in terms of the United States, if we have enough time before we're through. And it might surprise many of you folks out there. But I want to make sure both of these guys get a good chance to take a swing at the plate. So, gentlemen, let's go from left to right. Sir?
Hey, hello, everyone. My name is Luis Tejada. I'm a member of Freedom Socialist Party, and for my career, I am a clinician. I work with kids and families, issues of trauma and other mental health issues. So in general, analysis of the whole situation is standing in, with the working class and the people who are struggling, and for the most part, in general, if we look at surveys out there, the majority of people actually are in a completely different position than what the government actually does. The majority of people want affordable health care, and think that the current healthcare system here, specifically in the United States, not working. They want a higher wage. They want more, social programs. They actually want something to be done, in regards to gun laws. But really, as we have slowly come to find out, and I think that's maybe a dissatisfaction of people that vote for Trump, is that the way the system works, both doesn't actually matter. What matters is the interest of those in power, meaning those that own that make the laws, own the companies and factories, and they only see is just continue. What they see in front of them is a continual control of what they have now, with whether that be resources, people's actual time, actual work, and that's why people are pissed. That's why people voted different than what the status quo party put forward. People didn't vote for Hillary Clinton as to the same extent that the Democratic Party and the people who are behind the Democratic leadership expected them. They actually decided to vote for somebody completely different, like Bernie Sanders, and there was a big debate during the first primary. And people didn't vote for Jeb Bush, who was the ideal candidate for the Republican Party. They actually, somebody who has never been in politics before, took that opportunity, and because we are living in polarized time, because the government, it's clearly the curtains are, the veil is coming off, and people are starting to see that we don't have a democratic society, and that the society is democratic only to those that are in power and those that have money, and they are the ones that are making decisions for our society, not only in the United States, but really abroad, because the United States is a strong imperialist and has a lot of voice and power throughout the world.
Okay. So how do you feel about that? Oh, and introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Lou Grouper. I am co-chair of New York Labor for Bernie 2020. And I guess we have a number of jobs to do, but the main job that we have as trade union activists is to elect Bernie Sanders. And he's doing the job for us. I mean, he's the front runner. He's among those who have entered the race. He's just about to get, I think today or the next few days, his millionth donation, 1 millionth donation, for a million different individual donations. He's got $18 million in the bank. And compare it to when we started out 4 years ago for his campaign. He started out 3% in the polls. People were saying, "Who, Bernie? Who?" He wound up in New York State with 42% of the vote. So he did well, in the course of their campaign. But we're starting out in a much better place this time. He's the front runner, and he's doing our work for us. So the main thing we got to do is get out to our shops, our offices. We've got to talk to our coworkers and talk to them about Bernie. We just had our first meeting a couple of days ago, and we have a bunch of union activists. And this time around, 4 years later, we have a number of young trade union activists involved in this too as well. So feel good about that meeting, and I'm feeling some hope coming out of that. And we got to go talk to our unions, hand out leaflets at our unions, talk to our coworkers at union meetings about this, set up a table there. And we got a lot of work to do in our unions to get them to support. Compared it to the last time around, well, the last time around it was pretty much a done deal, and from the beginning. So we were fighting upstream all the way. This time, not quite as much. This time we're starting out in a good place.
I tell you, one of the things that, among many other things, that I find so disturbing about this Trump phenomenon is the relative ease that, and I say this as a former member of the military intelligence community, and anyone that's known me for a long while, knows that in the 11 years I spent in the Navy, I spent a little over half of them as a intelligence technician, and I was assigned to DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, which is one of the organizations that Donald Trump seems to hate the most. And before the show started today, I made the point, NSA, DIA, CIA, FBI, and a couple of others, Army Intel, and all these organizations, the thing that they have in common, one, they all said Russia was interfering in our election. That's the first thing. Second thing, and see, this is something that people have forgotten. Second thing they said was that there was no, and the FBI smacked him the hardest with this one. The FBI told him that there was no plot and nothing to this nonsense that over 3 million illegal immigrants voted for Hillary. And those two things, well, in Trump's mind, those are unforgivable. Hey, we see now, we have a president that he says, well, look, if you're not willing to lie for me and be loyal to me, then you're scum. I don't need you. I don't want you around. And what bothers me is working class people that, how in the hell, and I know that maybe some in the Democratic Party would caution me against speaking like this, but I'm sorry. Sometimes the truth hurts. I've had to deal with some hard truths about myself in my lifetime. I'm sure at one time or another all of us had. Listen, what kind of foolish person are we when we see somebody that basically lies to our face constantly? Why in the hell do we think that this guy is going to, is a good leader? I mean, you're here with the working guys, the union people. How do your union brothers feel about that?
Well, I'm a retiree, first of all, to full disclosure.
Okay.
But my union, CWA, Communication Workers of America, was the largest union to support Bernie in the 2016 Democratic primary. So they are very strong. My retirees that I work with, they're very strong, and the union members that we've talked to. Bernie helped us win our strike against CWA against Verizon.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So he's done a lot for us. He was just at a CWA rally in California, I believe. Bernie has done a lot. He's always been supportive of unions, so we feel very strongly about that. And as far as immigrant rights, my God, this is a nation of immigrants, and he's looking to destroy it. And that Bernie's the guy who can beat him. If Bernie wins the primary, no doubt in my mind that he will beat Trump. If you notice, Trump hasn't been attacking him too much because he knows that a lot of his supporters would vote for Bernie. And if we can get him there in Indiana, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in the rural areas, Bernie won them. Bernie won all of upstate with the rural areas. So so we will get him if we can get him to win this primary. No doubt in my mind he'll beat Trump. Yeah. Okay.
No, I was just going to say, because I wanted to narrow this down to Luis here for a reason. Now, you have some behind closed doors in the Democratic Party that are hoping that we do not go to Bernie, because they'll say, well, the Republicans, they will tie that socialist label to Bernie Sanders, and that will hurt us, especially in the heartland, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, places like that. That term socialist, because it has such a bad connotation for the last 85, 90 years. What do you guys feel about that from your side of the fence?
Well, we think that definitely Bernie is wrong by running in the Democratic Party and trying to change the politics and of how the Democratic Party, what the Democratic Party is, and what they are founded themselves to do. If he was truly serious with all this support, right? He got about close to 12 million votes last year. He can build 13 million votes. Yeah. There's an opportunity to build an independent party that's opposite of what the capitalist similar party that the Democratic represents. It's not to represent what the working class people is asking for, and I think look at what the Democratic Party is doing. They are, in general, right? They're not supporting the single payer health care bill that Bernie put forward in the Senate. Whether or is it, I think one question to ask is, Bernie playing with his 13 million supporters, right? Is this just a front set up by the status quo of the Democratic Party, to just have this game? Because clearly, if he does win, he's not getting support now as a senator. Will that support change if he becomes president? Will Democratic senators in Congress, the majority, start voting for democratic socialist bills like what Bernie and AOC are calling for? So that's something maybe people just need to we need to see if that happens. But I think it's just a waste of time. It has been tried to be done before. These popular fronts, where socialist candidates or minority socialist party try to get support from other parties that do not align to their values or what they're calling for, and that's not a principal position for a candidate to have. You cannot be a socialist like myself. You cannot just be shouting out like to another group, a majority group, and say, change your ways. What you do, you organize separate from them, and you confront them, in their electoral game. And that's the route that revolutionary socialists like myself, how we critique Bernie.
Now the problem that I see, actually, there's a problem I see with where both of you guys are coming from. And number one, now I've been in this game for a long time, and when I say in this game, I'm talking about I grew up in politics here in New York, and which gave me an outlet to national politics. My family were staunch black Republicans, as were most black people in the 50s and early 60s.
Abraham Lincoln Republicans.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, you could say that. As a matter of fact, black folks back then were more Republicans than many Republicans. The whole thing about socialism, give me an organization that where they're worst. What's that in business? Marketing. Socialist, and I'm not talking about your gang, your group, but socialists down through history have been their own worst enemy. Because I think that the way they went about things, especially here in America, they needlessly scared people when they didn't need to. The Democratic Party, after the 40s, quite frankly, after Jack Kennedy was murdered, and after Bobby was murdered, the Democratic Party got out of the business of educating voters, unfortunately. And that's one of the reasons why we're in the fix that we're in today. We are better than the Republican Party. We're more moral. We care about the lot of the average American, but we have forgotten how to explain why. And then, of course, you have a certain class of Democrats that, quite frankly, I don't know why they are Democrats. I would look at them and I would say, well, with your attitudes and your belief system, I think you would be far better being a member of the Republican Party. Now, I look at the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party of my beliefs basically are akin to what FDR brought to the country. I guess that's why I enjoy my movies mostly from 1934 up until 1948, quite frankly. That was the most socialist period in American history. Now, I understand what you're saying when you say that there has to be an independent party. That will not work. I got a friend, David, you've seen the shows I've done with David. And I'll tell you the same thing I tell him. That will not work because, number one, you do not have the intellectual base, quite frankly. You have enough problems in America trying to get people to accept things that are going to help them. Just like the story I told a few moments ago. This sucker doesn't want to accept the health care that could save his life that Bernie has. If he was not going to accept the health care that Bernie is trying for us to have, then bloody well he is not going to go for anything that the word socialism can be attached to it. What we have to do, what people have to do, what progressives have to do, we have to embark upon a campaign of education of the American public. Because right now, we have a country, basically, it's half full of people who really don't know a goddamn thing. They don't understand how that government works. We stopped teaching civics in the schools. People don't understand who's your congressman? How does he get elected? What is his job? And people do not know that. And I'm just saying, you cannot navigate in a system. How you going to play basketball if you don't know the rules of the game? And that's the situation that we have here. We have this guy Trump, who comes along, and all he's doing, he's spouting his fancy jet with the gold toilet seats and his racism. And you notice he says, if you come from south of the equator, we don't have any room for you. But yet, just about 2 months ago, he was saying, well, how come we can't get people from Norway and Europe, Western Europe? We're not full for them. And see, that's just pure racism.
Bob, can I comment on that as well?
Go right ahead.
Yeah. I wish, first of all, I'm a Democratic Socialist. I'm a member of DSA, Democratic Socialists of America's labor branch. I'm also on the board of directors of NIPAN, which came out of Bernie's campaign, the New York Progressive Action Network, a bunch of delegates that formed that group throughout New York State. I wish there was a mass socialist party out there. Unfortunately, there isn't. So you have to deal with the reality that you have, and which is why Bernie is running in the Democratic Party, because it's the only game in town right now. We want to change that. And I think in 2016, he began to form that schism, that divide between the establishment Democrats and the Bernie-crats. And I think we're beginning to see that fissure even widening. So I think, we'll see what happens in the future. But at this point, that's the only game in town. That's the reality of U.S. politics. You can't play in the game that you want. You have to play in the game that exists. Well, and you begin to change it. What was I say? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to let you know, and I let everyone know. And I'm very real about this, folks. And I will take all the knowledge that I've accrued over all my time in government and the military, and I will tell you, if we let this guy go for another 4 years, the whole conversation that we're having is academic. It won't make any difference.
That's true.
Because there won't be a Democratic Party. There won't be a Democratic Socialist Party. There will be no Socialist Party. There will be no Independent Party. Because it is Trump's ambition and goal to smash every bit of political opposition. We will have no loyal opposition in this country. That will be gone. When I said earlier at the beginning of this program, we are fighting for our lives here.
That's right.
I am a Bernie supporter. Make no mistake about that. But at this point, I will vote for a warthog if you tell me that, that warthog can beat Donald Trump. Okay. That's how desperate we are. Because if this man gets reelected, we won't have the United States of America.
Well, I think, a few things.
Okay.
The Democratic Party, I don't think it's a moral or a good party, because they just, if we draw facts on the table, it has been a party that votes with Republicans for the members majority when it comes to invading and in war internationally. So that's one thing, right? That also people in America need to think. They need to think of other humans, not as well as if you don't care about the social living of humans living internationally, then that's gonna damage your social living of us living here internationally. I'm talking as just regular individuals. So that's one clarification. and also, let's say, right, the party is not going to build itself, but building this party is not a party to compete with. If the parties decide to be built here in the U.S., right, it's not to compete with the Democratic Party and the Republican, and be part of this electoral system, because the electoral system it does not represent, like I said right earlier. There's many polls that say that what people want, and they want single payer and they want things like this, but that's not what the electoral system is. It's not we don't have an electoral system that people vote and things happen because that's what a collective group want. That's socialism. That's not the system we have. And I think, right, what you said, the intelligentsia, so the media of the U.S., as being the belly of the beast when it comes to capitalism, it has done a great job. And also socialists in the past, the many mistakes they have made by building these popular fronts with other parties that are not socialists, have led as well to the demise and had resulted in catastrophes so similar, right, to Germany. You can say 1917. Since 1915, 16, 17, the Social Democratic Party of Germany, failed at a time where they could have taken power away from the emperor, and then later on we got fascism because the party didn't act it was undisciplined, and it didn't do what similar to what the Russians did, and creating a Soviet Union. So right, you have all that history and I think workers should actually look at all that history and understand that the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, is not there to work for them. So I congratulate voters for not going out and voting and engaging in the civics, because there's no civic. Your vote doesn't count. And I think Donald Trump, he's doing the work that he needs to do as the president, in representing the ruling class. He redid the NAFTA plan, which is basically a neoliberal tactic of globalizing and opening markets, creating maquiladoras all across Latin America, across the world, which is producing goods at cheap labor, which is exploiting. That's why it relates to my comment earlier that we need to also think about human life and just take all these patriotic, flag things, because we are all in the same boat, and I think the humanity in general, our life is at stake if we just keep seeing things the way.
I mean, you telling me what the problem is, right? And that's fine.
Yeah.
Now I'm a patriot, okay? I believe in that flag. I fought for that flag. We'll put it this way. I served that flag. I think that nations are like men. And as they taught me when I was an altar boy, men are prone to make mistakes, just as nations are prone to make mistakes. Right now, the world is not ready for Captain Jean-Luc Picard and the United Group of Nations of United Planets of the Federation.
It's a long time since I watched Star Trek.
I'm a Trekkie. Live long and prosper, baby.
Bob, first of all, I want to thank you for your service. My candidate, Bernie Sanders, was on the Veterans Affairs Committee, and he appreciates the work of veterans and trying to improve the treatment you guys get.
Yeah,
and
because
girls get too.
because
Yeah,
we treat
yeah.
our veterans like scum. We treat our veterans worse than any other Western nation. And see, these are the questions that need to be asked. You were just talking about health care. Now, let me ask you a question. I'm surprised. Yeah, you got a lot of people that, what do you think the good thing is? What's the good thing for health care? Single payer, right?
Yeah, single payer. There's the what do you call it? The oh my God, Medicare for All Act, which Bernie and Ocasio-Cortez are pushing. And then there's in New York State, there's the New York Health Act, which is a lot of people are pushing in the state.
All
Act
right,
as
now
well.
those are supposed to be the good things, especially for working class people, right? But do you know there are a lot of people who feel that they don't want that. They like the healthcare system as it is because they say that I have a choice of my own doctor. And a lot of people, they feel that that is more important. These glasses keep slipping, damn military glasses. But they feel it's more important that people have the right to have the choice of their own doctor. So what do you tell people like that?
Well, they are just in the minority. If you're looking at the poll, they are in the minority, and so if that's the case, right? That's just the simple thing. They are in the minority, but it doesn't play out that way in the things that we are receiving because we don't have single payer. Even though most of the people agree that there should be a more affordable and it should be tax deducted. We don't have that.
Answer.
Well, actually, 70% of the American people do believe in Medicare for all.
Yes.
So, of course, when the details come out, and they try to confuse people by saying you can't have the doctor of your choice, et cetera, et cetera. But I think in the plans that when it does get through and they iron out the details, I think that will happen.
That's something that you guys need to do. The next time you have contact with Bernie and his crew, you need to ask him, well, does that mean that people cannot choose their own doctor?
Oh, absolutely.
That's something that he needs to
look at how it's grown. Look how it's grown in the Congress
because
because of Bernie. He's shifted the political spectrum to the left.
Now,
where he's got a lot of senators and representatives now who are coming out on support. A lot of the candidates who are running are, who have come over to support single pay. Have come out to support Medicare for all.
And now,
can I just say one thing?
Okay, make it
came
quick.
here for New York Labor for Bernie. I just wanted to show everybody what we're doing. We're passing these out, and I want to give a shout out to my coworker Jonah Furman, young activist who's working on this as well, and George Albro, who led Labor for Bernie the last time.
That's the guy.
Being
George
very helpful.
Albro.
Yeah, he's being very helpful this time around. And George Albro was the head of it. Now, my last shout out, I got to give it to Eddie Kay, who used to be the head of the 1199, the Hospital Workers Union, and one of the leaders of it, and is now working with DC 1707. Eddie, in the last primary, we got out there every day. I was one of his soldiers, and we got out there every day. We leafleted hospitals. We leafleted picket lines. Like I said, we were on, CWA was on strike against Verizon and other picket lines. Anytime there was a union delegates meeting, we're out there, and that's just what we have to do this time, and get out there and get drum up support for Bernie.
Okay, now one other thing.
I guess if I can add, what you said earlier, like mistakes, but slavery, segregation, other crises, even this, the healthcare crisis, those things are not mistakes. Those are actually systematic and planned. Mass incarceration. It all serves a purpose, and it's needed, and it's needed for this system. It's not a mistake.
Well, I call those mistakes of man, because you will find that those things, they happened all over the world. Okay, I think there's not a nation that is not guilty of some type of bestiality, of some type of mass slaughter or mass killing. God knows Russia, they are having expertise at it. Quite frankly, the United States is the only nation in the history of the world that ever fought a civil war to end slavery. And they are very, I don't think no other nation in the history of the planet can ever say that. But going to a dovetailing off of that.
Mexico actually got rid of slavery before the U.S., and that's why Texas, became.
I know, that's why that was one of the beasts that the Texicans had against the Mexican government with Santa Anna.
Part of.
I understand that. I will come back to that in a moment. But one thing I could not pass up, and it's something that needs to be said because it is so dangerous, because it affects our lives today. And that is this. Trump and the Republicans are trying to do something. And we've already had a number of deaths behind this nonsense. And that is this. Trump is trying to put out this nonsense with the help of some black stooges, I guess, who call themselves conservatives or Republicans. Quite frankly, there's no such thing as a black conservative. Those days are long past. The only thing you have now, you have black Sambos who call themselves conservatives, especially at this point in the 21st century. And they're trying to say that Democrats are anti-Semitic, that we are anti-Jewish. And that really, it angers me. As a person, I, up until several years ago, I was Roman Catholic. I was an altar boy. But I came up at a very unique time, in a very unique place, a very unique circumstance. I spent a lot of my time at the yeshiva on 123rd Street on Broadway. And I received a lot of my instruction there and up the street at Riverside Church. As a matter of fact, I was a member of the choir at Riverside Church. And that's very important because Riverside and Yeshiva, they had a lot of programs that they shared back and forth. So I was very much into Jewish history, literature, when I was, still a young kid. And when I joined the Navy, unfortunately, my last duty station, after I left the White House and the Pentagon, I wound up in a fighter squadron in North Florida. And that was the first time I ever came across real anti-Semitism and people who hated Latinos, who hated Hispanics. And I tell you, it was hell. And quite frankly, at the time, my wife was getting ready to have our son, and her health was not that good. And I'll be honest about it. If I had not gone through all the crap and, fighting, because they found out, I was from New York, Roman Catholic, and that I had even attended the yeshiva, and that didn't sit too well with a certain clique there. And the people were piss poor sailors on top of everything else. And I wrote a letter to the not just the commanding officer, but I wrote a letter to the NAACP in D.C. And nothing came of it. When the new skipper came, the new CO came, he cleaned house, and he got the chief bigots. He got them out of there. He ran them out of there. But like I say, it took a hell of a lot out of me. And that's one of the reasons why I went into the reserve and I left active duty. So I get kind of angry when people try to throw that term anti-Semitic around. Now, there are things that are going on with the Israeli government in the Knesset. Now, they're a sovereign nation, God bless them, and they have a right to do their own thing, because that's what sovereign nations do. But just because they have a right to do that, their own thing, that doesn't mean that I have to agree with it. And quite frankly, I don't. I think that for them to re-elect Netanyahu, I always screw up his last name. I meant no disrespect. Netanyahu. I think that was a mistake on their part. Just like it was a mistake for us to put, however Trump got to the White House, I think that was a mistake for us. But that was their election. They chose it, and that's what they got. So they have to live with the consequences. But as an American, I have big problems with their policies in terms of how they treat the Palestinians.
So do I.
And I think that's wrong. And as an American, I don't want to see any of their policies do things that will blow back upon my government and how we deal with folks over there in the so-called Middle East. And that does not make me an anti-Semite. I've been to Israel on a number of occasions. I've enjoyed the chance to be in the Holy Land, but it's also a place that's always struck me as being very sorrowful. And I hope that someday that whole situation gets straightened out fairly for all the people involved, for Jews, Palestinians, and for Christians. But just because I don't agree with the right-wing government and their Knesset, that does not make me anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic. And I think that that's something that needs to be said there. And I am so damn tired of Trump, and I think that's something that all three of us here can agree on. The way that this man and his foul followers constantly keep on throwing aspersions at people, hoping that the grenade will go off to see how many people he can hurt. And you see about all these people who've been, stashing bombs, the shootings, the slaughter in black churches, in Jewish synagogues. And I asked myself, just how much more are we supposed to take? This man is not, he does not conduct himself as a president. He conducts himself as a cowardly gang leader. And the United States of America, I don't give a damn what party you're in. We don't need filth like this in the White House. Amen. And it's time that we grow up as a nation, and really start trying to give people equality and humanity in the Oval Office, and get that bum out of there, because that's all we're dealing with. A draft dodging, tax stealing bum, him and his whole family. And if he's so upset about immigration, then maybe he should have a talk with his mom and his grandfather.
Amen. Bob, I am Jewish, and in his latest book, Bernie Sanders, Where We Go From Here, has a section on how proud he was of his Jewish heritage, that he grew up in Brooklyn. Where to take it from here? All the things that Bernie is pushing, $15 minimum wage, support of unions, the Medicare for all those issues, whatever. He has moved that spectrum to the left. He's getting a lot more support this time around. When he raised it 4 years ago, hardly anybody was on board. He has moved the political dial, and we need to take advantage of that. We need to move it even further. So hopefully we'll continue in the struggle and see where it takes us from here.
And Louis, this is one thing, I hope you agree with me on this. One thing we have to start doing in this country, we have to start educating. It's not just about educating the voters, but about educating people in America in general. I will bet that most Americans out there don't even know that this whole term about white, American white man, black man, these terms did not even appear in literature or in law till sometime in the 1670s. As a matter of fact, in Maryland, before Bacon's Rebellion, the idea of denoting people by the color of their skin, no one ever thought about that. But when they saw white workers working with black workers, okay, living, marrying, a lot of that was going on, side by side. And the tribes who had already, how should I say, what's the proper term, had gotten used to having the Europeans living in their lands, they too had begun working with the Africans and with the English, okay, and people were working together. It was after that rebellion that the money people, well, I'll be damned. You got a point there. You damn sure do have a point. Because it was the capitalists in England who felt that the best way for them to maintain their labor supply, right, and continue to make their profit, was to begin to have racial restrictions upon the movement of people. That is when this whole business, like I said, starting in Maryland, about separating people, that's when it began. And look at papers, like court papers, for example, before, like, say, around the 1660s. And then check out papers, going into the 1680s, 1690s. And you'll see a difference. You'll see where race now plays a significant part. There was a time, for example, if a white woman and a black man had decided to get married, their child would be born and there would be no question about the freedom of that child. After 1680, that was no longer the case. Was the child, then questions would be answered, would be asked, was the child's father a Christian? Or was the child's father enslaved? And see, all these little things started cropping up. And slowly but surely, that's when this whole racial thing began. And we took this long walk here in America into darkness. There's a lady, I got her name written down somewhere. Next show I'm going to talk about it even more. But she wrote a book upon the subject, and she's lecturing across the country on it. And she talks about how we sank into this whole racial thing here in the United States. And it's pretty interesting to see how the economic system combined with race brought about the misery that we know today. And it's something for folks to study. And that's why you study the past, because it gives you grounding and an idea of, well, this is how we got into this mess here in the present. Let's start figuring out ways that we can make the future better. So we're getting ready to close up here. I want these two gentlemen to some closing statements.
Yes, I believe that, at one point, we are gonna be able. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But I guess right when our livelihood and the livelihood of the earth is at stake. But sooner than later, people are moving closer together, right? It's very hard for now, at least in for example, let's talk about the U.S. for some people to go, government officials to go out there and say, oh, this person is black and he's worth less than you. That's not going to pass like it did pass hundreds of years ago, because people have this conscious and also, anti-gay and anti-LGBTQ culture. Of course, you have a clique, a percentage of people that are hardcore in that, right? Because they just are very rigid in what they're thinking. But I have faith that those who are the majority of people who are suffering can make that connection not only to those immediately around them, but now thanks to that we have social media and we can see what's happening all over the world, and also how millions of people and billions are suffering as well, that we can create a society which is based on human principles.
Okay.
Okay. One area we discussed tonight was socialism. And I think we need to bear in mind that 13 million people voting for Bernie 4 years ago is what was helped to make socialism much more respectable. It's in the conversation now. Not that the establishment ain't going to attack it, of course they are. But at the same time, he's done that. And I think through his advocacy of criminal justice reform, Bernie has gotten a lot more supports among blacks and Latinos this time around than he did the last time. So stay tuned. We got a long way to go. We got a whole year before this primary is decided. But stay tuned. Right now he's the front runner, and hopefully we can help, getting out to our unions, getting out to our members, begin to elect him. Oh yeah, can I just make one more quick thing? You can reach New York Labor for Bernie 2020 at our Gmail, nylaborforbernie@gmail.com.
Okay. Well, folks, that is it for the day. I am so glad that you were kind enough to allow us into your homes. Just do yourself a favor. Pay attention to what's going on. I don't think that anyone could put it more succinctly than that. Always remember that what's going on in the news, no matter how badly it's presented, okay, it concerns you. Remember, that's the name of the game. Let's keep the working class people, let's keep them, how should I say? I don't want to say let's keep them dumb, because you folks are not dumb by a damn sight. But what they want you to do, they want you to, here, hit that for me. They want you to basically not pay attention to what's happening. They want you to feel that, oh, well, them folks down in D.C., always arguing. Thank you, brother. They're always arguing and fussing about something. Who knows what they're talking about? Well, guess what? You're supposed to know what they're talking about, because it's your kids, it's your life, it's your country. And if you don't know, you're the one that's going to wind up holding the short straw. One of the things that we're talking about, a decent wage, that concerns you. You're going out there working, you should be able to live off of the money that you make. You shouldn't be working on poverty wages. And that's one of the things that we're fighting against. So please, for your own good, pay attention to what's going on.
Can I make one last announcement, Bob?
Please.
Okay, thank you. On one of the groups I belong to is NIPAN, the New York Progressive Action Network, and we're going to be having a fundraiser. We have one every year on April 27th at the Judges Memorial Church at 6 p.m. Costs a little to get in there, but check us out on Facebook or Twitter. And State Senator Alessandra Biaggi is going to be honored at this one among.
Oh,
many
Biaggi's
others.
going to be there?
Yes.
Now, she's
among many
Bronx,
others.
right?
What's that? She's the Bronx, right?
Yes.
Right. Among many others who are going to be honored there as well.
Tell them how much it's going to cost again.
Oh, $99 a shot. So it does cost, but
$90.
90. When's it going to be?
April 27th.
Wow. That's unfortunate for me.
Yeah,
But for those of us who can afford to go,
exactly,
it's worth it. But, well, there you have it. Well, listen, once again, thank you for allowing me into your homes. See you next Saturday. Bye now.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Oh,
My pleasure.
you folks did.
Good.
You guys did very well.
Luis, mucho gusto. Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you something. In your case, when's the next time? 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Actually, I'm gonna be going to Vienna.
Where?
So, Vienna, Austria.
How the hell you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go there and meet some friends.
Mhm.
So actually, in June, like I will be available.
Damn, man.
If you happen to run into Kent Northworthy in Vienna, it's a big Bernie activist during
Oh, yes.
4 years ago. Yeah.
What's the name of it?
Kent Northworthy is his
Kent
name.
Northworthy.
Kent.
How
Kent
much is it
Northworthy?
costing?
Yeah, I think it's been a while.
So I have this card that it gives me Sky Mile points. So actually, it just cost me $220.
Yeah, but how about, where you stay at, though?
Oh, where I'm staying, $300. Sorry, $500 for the time. It's
For how long?
Airbnb. So
Don't move your chair, Bob, because I think my wire is
you know
caught under.
Airbnb? So it's people that rent their apartment there
Yeah.
when they go out.
Yeah, but you got to pay for your meals and everything, right?
Oh yes. So I think I'm gonna be in a decent budget. So maybe I hear that the price of food, at least in Austria, is not that costly.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, I think like $10 a day.
Listen, you don't have any connections like that in England, do you?
No, I don't. I'm not traveling to England.
Okay. Man, the minute you get back, call me.